Do you think the cloud and virtualization has removed all your security concerns? Well, stay tuned to find out more.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, everyone, and I'm excited that you're here because we're talking about virtualization and cloud security. Now, luckily, I know a little bit of something about this. But Daniel, virtualization, I figured that would remove all of our security concerns, but I'm guessing that's not true?
You know, it was thought to be the savior of all things, but no, it's weird how new technologies come with their own set of baggage when it comes to security. So it's something we have to take a little moment to focus on, figure out what those things are so that we can be prepared for that as we engage in the use of said virtualization or cloud-based technology. So let's start there with virtualization. Now, here's the interesting thing is, I kind of want to pregame this a little bit. Virtualization and cloud, you might be going, aren't they kind of the same thing? Kinda, right?
I'd even go as far as no.
So most cloud technologies are using virtualization. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a foundational unit of those. Otherwise, those technologies
Correct.
kind of don't exist.
But just because cloud is using virtualization doesn't mean it doesn't have its own set of things that we need to be delineated off of just virtualization properly. So with virtualization, things we need to be prepared to understand as far as security risks go. All right, so we're thinking in our mind, we've got virtualization, I've got a bare metal, I've got a hypervisor. I slapped that onto that bare metal. Now I'm able to create all these different lovely servers and workstations and do all sorts of great stuff. So let's move into, it's complex. It's a highly complex system now. It was not the same as it was where if I wanted a new server, I had to buy the hardware, I had to go grab a network cable, get that, and then slap it in a rack, fire it up, install an operating system. And it was a bit of a work to get that running. Now we live in virtualization land where I just have a machine with a ton of RAM and disk and CPU and network capabilities. And I can provision till my heart's content or until I run out of resources, which can totally happen. And guess what? You basically denial of service to yourself at that point because you need to keep an eye on the complexity of the system itself. An important part of that. Don't let it grow too unmanageable. That is a security risk because what happens? Justin, Sicily, 1923. A man provisions 15 different servers in one day and goes, oh, okay, well, I'm just working on something and I'm going to stand those down. And he forgets one. Guess what? What do you think is happening at that point to that specific server?
My first thought is someone's going, hey, what's this? Let's just poke at it. Let's see what's going on. Hey, this is cool.
You know what? It has been getting updates in the last 2 years because somebody forgot it was here, right? So the VM sprawl is a real issue, and that's what I mean when it comes to complexity, right? Also, we can't look into the networking components as well as we can, or at least a lot of times, depending on your technology, as you can with actual hardware, right? So it becomes much more of a heavy lift as an administration in that vein, where it's super easy when it comes to, hey, I need a server. I need to have this much RAM, disk space, CPU. Cool. Bang, click. There it goes. There it is. I'm off to the races. Very simple. But the stuff that is making all that happen behind the scenes and how we can let it get away from us as far as its growth and sprawl, that could definitely cause some security issues with forgetting that they're not getting updated, it's unmanageable, right? So be aware of that. Let's see here, golden images. If you're using something like golden images, which is, let's say I'm doing virtual desktops, right? Cool, or maybe I'm virtualizing a lot of the same kind of servers. It's a real temptation to use a golden image where, hey, I'll make one image and then I'll deploy that image out from there. And then everybody will get that image, right? And that's how it should be done, honestly. That is the right way. But, right, here comes the but, which is, what if that golden image has a security misconfiguration? What if I accidentally, when I was creating the desktop environment, turned off the firewall because I was doing some testing, and then I left it off and created the golden image and forgot all about it, and now I've deployed 100 desktops that have no firewalling turned on. Could be a problem, right? So golden images, another thing we got to look out for. as far as virtualization goes. And then, of course, unauthorized access to the hypervisor. We want to be using secure portals to that, firewalling off access to that specific system. Because there's a lot of, I think ESX does this. I haven't really worked with Zen, but I assume it's very similar. Is that I'm accessing this through a web portal. I'm not actually logging into the device. Not that I don't do that from time to time, but majority of my work is done through web access. Does my entire company need that access? And is that access protected well if they do have that ability to see that portal? I would try to hem that off as much as possible, do some network segmentation, and making sure that the way that you log into that is extremely robust so that if someone were to find it or get access to it somehow, they still had another hurdle to jump over to keep that environment safe. Because if I can allow Justin to log in, and let's say he's a disgruntled employee, insider threats are a real thing. Yes, I like that look. Get that look, Courtney. I like it. That's the one right
That's it.
there.
Yep.
That's what they look like. It's how you spot an insider threat.
If it was that easy.
Right, but if he has that access, what level of damage could he do? It could be devastating. Provision everything, or just erase all the VMs. And if he has access to the backups of that, maybe you can erase that as well. You start seeing the slippery slope with giving people access to that stuff. So there's virtualization, the proper idea of that this is a virtualized environment.
Now, Daniel, I'm going to turn it around a little bit. Those are definitely concerns. Golden images, I use golden images.
Yeah,
they make things
of course
easy,
you do.
right? The one thing that I think can help that ends up not helping if you're transitioning from a typical IT environment is automation, right? Some of these testing facilities, maybe more of a software developer mindset, right? So if I'm building my golden image, maybe I'm using something like Packer from HashiCorp or whatever it may be, maybe that's part of my build pipeline. And part of my build pipeline is some automated security testing, right? I'm looking for common configurations. But if you're not used to setting that up, right? You're used to let's unpack the server, put this up here, I'm going to manually do these things. Maybe you're not doing those. So now the golden image has that propensity of spreading those things. Secondly, in cloud services, the access to the hypervisor and even some of the hardware that these hypervisors run on, those, you always have to think about shared tenancy. Because now I'm sharing hardware with other people. If people can jump into the actual host.
That's in a cloud service though, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that kind of, this is why I wanted to pregame that.
Yeah.
Where most of the time when you're dealing with virtualization, we're seeing a lot less and less of on-prem stuff.
Yeah.
And more multi-tenancy environments like AWS, Google Cloud Compute, Azure, that kind of stuff.
And you can tell that's where my mind
His mind just jumps straight to it because that's what happens.
Yeah, that's what happens. And, well, I guess I need to back up a little bit then. Let's actually talk about some of the issues that may crop up from not just virtualization, but utilizing these cloud services themselves.
Yeah, let's move into cloud proper. Now that we understand, if you just had like an on-prem thing, some of the things you need to look at. Now we're into more normal land here of cloud. Yes, multi-tenancy is going to probably be the first thing on most people's minds. They're thinking, I'm sharing an environment with Bob's, hatsforcats.com. Does Bob do proper security of his systems? Am I going to have to worry about someone being able to access my system because Bob wasn't secure? That's something you have to work out with your service provider, right? So as we move out into the cloud, we now have new things that are going to pop up, and not just the old things, right? We got all the new fun stuff. So that multi-tenancy is going to be one of the major players, and that's a lot of times is the conversation stopper for certain entities, certain organizations. They say, I have to have my own dedicated area. It can't be touched by anybody else, right? If you can guarantee me that, then we can come on with cloud. Other than that, I'm going to have to do an on-prem something because that's just how it works. And regulations will highly influence that decision.
And from my understanding, most cloud services provide you the option of saying, I need dedicated tenancy.
Yeah, they do. But
You got that jack. You got that cheddar.
Yeah, you do.
Because the pricing model changes a great deal if you say, I need this dedicated set of physical resources.
Well, the thing that makes it so cheap is that you're sharing resources, right? So once you've decided I'm not doing that, well, we will need some money because Otherwise, I would be doing that and making more money. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Let's talk about poor access management. Same thing, right? You've got a portal you log into. You got to be careful with your keys. You got to be careful with your passwords, because if I gain access to Justin's AWS systems, I'll spin up a bunch of stuff and start mining cryptocurrency. And he's got to eat that bill, because how can he prove it wasn't me? He's going to have a hard time if I was able to gain access. A couple of things you can do. We'll talk about some mitigations. I'll save that for the end here. What else? Data breaches and leaks. Just like regular servers, you got to worry about that. People coming at you through your users, maybe social engineering or vulnerabilities in your software or web applications, right? These are also coming over into cloud land, because it's just a server, but you just don't have it here, okay? What else? Denial of service attacks. That can be a tricky one when it comes to cloud. And it's probably, again, one of the bigger ones that people need to think about when they start thinking, well, maybe we'll move into a cloud service. Because they're not necessarily attacking you. They might be attacking your provider. So if I were so inclined and I had the bandwidth somehow, some way to bring an AWS instance to its knees, I'm the man, by the way. But it could happen. Maybe you're using some different cloud provider that's not using such a large or has such a large presence in the world with all those resources. Denial of service attack could easily happen, and again, might not be pointed or directed right at you, but at your provider itself or somebody that shares tenancy with you, right? So things we got to think about. Moving on, separation of tenancy, what to do when that fails, like side channel attacks. Got to worry about those. So VM isolation compromise is a big one. So when you deal with shared tenancy, you have to worry about someone. There is such a thing as the ability to jump from one VM into another. Now, typically, we see very robust security when it comes to this, but O-days exist because we can't cover it all. So there's always going to be this cyclical motion of going from security to insecurity as new vulnerabilities are discovered, new technologies are implemented, and then their vulnerabilities are discovered, and then the patching cycle begins, and we lather, rinse, repeat, and we continue to do this until we all die or stop using computers altogether.
Man, that escalated quickly.
Well, it's a nihilistic system.
but it's one of those things where kind of those key concepts, when you use cloud provider, you indirectly become part of a high-value target.
Correct.
Right? So maybe you're not the high-value individual that they're looking to compromise, but you might be near someone. Or they go, well, I know AWS has got a bunch of high-value clients.
Yeah.
Or Azure or GCP or whatever your cloud service. Okay, well, let me see if I can get one over on them. And maybe you're just a byproduct, collateral damage, if you will.
Happens all the time.
So it is something that you need to be aware of, even if you don't think you're the thing that's causing people to come there.
Yeah, totally right. If you think that you'll have security just because you're with a cloud provider, that's not a good mindset to have. So continually think security, even if you have moved into cloud. Okay, let's talk about a couple other things, and then we'll call it a day. Talk about CSP supply chain. So this is a cloud service provider. Their supply chain might get compromised. Again, it's not a direct attack on you. It's an attack on their network interface, their hard drives, their infrastructure. They're using something to give you the cloud service that is so near and dear to your heart. But now it's been compromised through no fault of your own. You did your due diligence, but you don't have that control anymore. And that's a lot of this cloud insecurities come from the fact that you as an individual have relinquished control over those systems. And now if something happens, you have to blame them. Now, there are a couple things that you can do that you would have to blame yourself. If you spun up a VM and never updated it, then you got to blame yourself. You made a buggy web app, you got to blame yourself. But something like a supply chain attack, that's going to be on the side of your cloud provider. And it is something that could happen and that we have to be aware of. Data deletion is another one I want to bring up really quickly. Are they deleting your data in a secure manner or in a way that is regulatorily compliant for you? If you don't know, you need to find that out. How is old data being handled? Is it being leaked out some way, shape, or form? Can someone access that because it's not being encrypted and re-encrypted and then destroyed? And then the physical drives are being destroyed. How is that being done? If you have to be compliant in a certain way for you to be compliant, that has to be done in a certain way, you better make sure that that's happening before something bad happens. Otherwise, you're going to wish you had. It's going to be a bad day for you. Justin, you look like you want to say something.
So I was just, it really boils down to something you talked about in virtualization that carries over into cloud services, and that's complexity. A lot of these originate from, you have a whole new set of complexities that you have to manage.
Yeah.
Right? Access management. A lot of times they have, like, I'll just take AWS. I'm familiar with AWS.
Yeah.
You have to learn their access management rules.
That's right.
That's one of the very first things I ever applied to MFA to. Because I knew if someone got access to my AWS, I might have a $30,000 bill in no time. And I go, well,
I ain't got that money.
Oops. Hey, y'all gonna laugh. I ain't got it. Data access, data leaks, S3 buckets, right?
All day.
Every day. They've since changed some of those policies, the default policies, but because people didn't really understand how those policies worked when they first started using AWS, or maybe they didn't care, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Boom. Oh, well, here's 4 million customer records just on the internet. Well, nobody will ever find that bucket. Oh, yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. And I think that encapsulates so many of these. Denial of service. Oh, I forgot how to do the firewall rules or the network security groups. Or, hey, well, Amazon's got a WAF. I didn't turn that on, even though, whatever, right? So there's that complexity, again, that carries over into cloud services that's going to take a little bit of time to get up to snuff on.
Yeah.
And that's just the name of the game.
And you segue us perfectly into our last topic here, which is going to be security management or configuration. What can we do? What measures can we take to actually make this thing secure? A lot of these things are like a privation, right? I have a password to log into my portal. Great. Make sure it meets security complexity requirements. Make sure you're following proper security complexity requirements. Make that a policy that you must do that if you spin up or add new this, that, or the other, that if it requires a password, it must meet these standards. We talk about that, right, in security policies. It's important for that to be there and that you're following those rules. Do things like enable multi-factor authentication. Justin just hit the nail on the head. If you need to have my phone and my password, then my password might not be the most robust thing in the world, but you now have to jump through 2 hoops, which is going to be much more difficult, right? So you increase the complexity for the attacker, right? Put some onus on them. What else can we do? You don't have any role-based access control. Highly recommend that because I'm familiar mostly with AWS as well, done a little bit of time in Azure, but you need to set up things like security groups that say, this is the HR security group. They have access to these resources because their role dictates that they need that access. Of course, you have to justify that, put that in the policies and procedures for things, and fire away. But if you don't have it, if I just say, hey, we spun up a server, log in. Well, what can I not see? I don't know. It's just log in. You're good.
Or everybody's part of the super admin group.
Right.
And you can even go as far as...
Seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've done it. You can even go as far as like, hey, you can only log in from these originating IPs.
That's right.
Or from these particular machines.
Right.
So there's robustness there. You have to know how to exercise it.
That's exactly right. So again, it's a lot of this isn't rocket science. It's just taking a look at common security practices and applying them. If you notice that malware is getting installed, then how is that happening, right? Well, someone is installing it. They either have a bad browsing habits, or you don't have the security measures in place. Maybe I need to install some antivirus, right? Maybe I need to do some security awareness training, right? You got users that deal with the thing, so you want to make sure they're up to snuff and up to speed when it comes to the security practices for just about any device, but it doesn't abate just because it's cloud. Justin, I think we are good, my man. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Remember, virtualization has its own set of issues. and that are different than cloud-based solutions, but a lot of cross-pollination because they are typically the same kind of thing. Make sure you understand those different things, and hopefully that will help you secure your virtualized or cloud environments.
I tell you what, you really have to dig in when it comes to getting things up to snuff security-wise in the cloud environment.
Yeah.
I feel a little more comfortable because that's been my typical MO, right? That's where I operate.
Right.
I haven't done a lot of on-prem things. I've done a little bit, and I don't feel as comfortable. But that has to do with lack of knowledge, lack of learning, and, well, that's what you're here for.
There you go.
Make sure that you're always learning. But for us, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. So signing off for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Justin Innocent,
I'm Daniel Lowry.
and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.